Ooh.
And astonishing goal. That's the way to do it. Herrera. Ibrahimovic! With 3.5 minutes to play. Now Di Maria wants it back, gets it back. Fantastic.
That's the luck of the bounce off Gaston Ramirez. Top try! What a day this is turning out to be for Manchester United.
Mason Greenwood hits the spot.
In he goes towards Muriel. What a save, David De Gea. Brilliant save.
Dan James. Dream debut. Daniel James.
Hello and welcome back to the United Devils podcast. This week we are finishing season 1 of our podcast and maybe doing so in a slightly dismal manner with a review of United's exit from the Europa League semi-final after a 2-1 defeat to Sevilla. We will also be looking at the season as a whole and what's currently happening in the transfer window. With me today, I welcome back both Aryan and Nithin. Welcome back, guys, and I'm afraid we are going to start with the dismal note of Sevilla. Of course, United's third semi-final exit this season, having lost 3-1 to Chelsea in the FA Cup semi-final and 3-2 on aggregate in the Carabao Cup semi-final in January. United obviously started with a very strong team, a couple shocks when David De Gea was named as the starting goalkeeper and Fred was named ahead of Matic. And probably a few shocks as well if Lindelof was named ahead of Bailly, who played very well against Copenhagen. But those changes were made to the side, and Sevilla obviously started with the same side that beat Wolves the round before. And United got off to a great start. Clear penalty when Rashford was brought down by Diego Carlos. Bruno smashed it into the top corner. Brilliant penalty. And then 18 minutes later, Sevilla score with a defensive error from whoever you'd like to call it. You can call it from Wan-Bissaka for getting the cross in, for allowing Reguilon's cross in, or for Williams for not really seeing Suso at the back post. And then United huffed and puffed, looked better in the start of the second half, had a flurry of chances. I think they had a total of 6 shots on target during that time. And the ball just wouldn't go in the back of the net. I mean, Bono, the goalkeeper, was fantastic. Fernando and Koundé in defence were brilliant, and they were walls, really, at points. And then 10 minutes from time, Luke de Jong just turns up out of nowhere, goes past Lindelof and Wan-Bissaka and scores. A brilliant cross from Jesus Navas, both fullbacks exposing Manchester United during that game. And United exit against Sevilla. Again, it's actually the 9th time United have failed to beat Spanish opposition in a row. The last time was a 1-0 win against Celta Vigo in Spain in 2017. Aryan, we'll just start firstly from the very beginning. The lineup. Were you at all concerned with the 11 players that started the team? I saw a tweet. You said you're a bit unnerved about Fred and De Gea, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's correct. I fully expected Lindelof to be back in there, but I thought other than that, Nemanja Matic will slot back in for Fred, and I thought Romero would retain his place, and I thought that would be the lineup. And I felt like with the way Sevilla play and with how disciplined Matic is defensively, I thought even though I don't think Fred played badly and he was decent going forward too, he was giving United another outlet. I just felt like Matic would have been that defensive stability against the possession-heavy Sevilla side. So that was kind of, as I said in my tweet, I was hoping that doesn't backfire on Oli, because it's like you have this formula in a way that worked against Copenhagen, that kept a clean sheet, and then you kind of start switching things up, and it's often not a good omen. But I don't want to say that the team selection was at fault here, because obviously United had the chances, but just going to how the game was lost, I think we knew, everybody, even us that don't play football, we're just talking about it. We knew how Sevilla play, and we just let them beat us that way. That they went down both flanks, they whipped cross, and they scored the 2 goals. So it was, I feel like, as has been the case with United for the past couple of seasons, not only this season, United beat themselves really because they didn't take their chances, and then at the other end, they just didn't defend quite sharply enough against a team that's very creative and, as I said, likes to be on the ball, and it just kind of came back to bite us. And that game just had that kind of a feeling, didn't it? From like the 60th minute onwards, you were like, okay, all of those chances that we just did not miss, this is going to come back to haunt us, isn't it? And it's in typical United fashion as of late. Unfortunately, it did, and we went on to lose the third semi-final this season.
Yeah, well, of course, we'll go on to that point when we do our season summary later on. But before then, we'll just go through the key parts of the game, really. Like you said, individual errors cost us, really. But we'll start with the positive point for United. 7 minutes in, the penalty. Nathan, do you think, I mean, obviously it was United's 22nd penalty of the season, but clear penalty for you without a shadow of a doubt?
Yeah, obviously. That was a harsh challenge on Rashford, so it deserved a penalty. I've seen many rival fans mocking us for giving that. So I don't think so. It was a clear penalty anyways.
Thank you. And we'll continue. I just throughout the game, there were some contentious decisions from the referee. Obviously, you don't like to blame the referee because it was our own fault. We didn't score more and conceded 2. But personally, for myself, I thought the referee was really questionable. Should have had another penalty. There were a few challenges from Diego Carlos I didn't quite like. I thought he should have been sent off really overall. And United actually got the first yellow card of the game. Brandon Williams' first challenge of the game brought a yellow card, and I thought that was rather unfair from the referee, who's had a few controversial decisions down the years. Were you at all happy with the decisions given by the referee?
Obviously, the refereeing was terrible that day. I mean, look, from Diego Carlos should have been sent off in the first half, to be honest. It was really harsh, and we should have got a penalty for fouling Bruno Fernandes in the box. It was a clear foul as well on Bruno Fernandes, and the fact that the build-up that led to the first goal, so it clearly came off a Sevilla player, and it should have been a throw-in for us. So, and the referee gave it to Sevilla, and the build-up created the first goal. So refereeing was terrible, absolutely terrible. It was shambles.
Arian, who would you blame for that goal? I mean, is it Wan-Bissaka? Is it Williams? Is it both of them? Or is it Maguire, who came under a lot of criticism for not looking in the right direction?
I think I would blame the whole back four as a collective, to be honest, because I was kind of frustrated about that throw-in because obviously the VAR can't look over it and it's just a mistake and it happens. But from that throw-in, they switched the play to the totally other side of the pitch, and United had plenty of opportunities to deal with that before it got into the danger area. I vividly remember how Reguilón went down that left-hand side and Lindelof started to close him down right on the touchline. And he could have put in a tackle, and he probably should have. That would have get the ball out of play and let the United regroup. He didn't, and eventually he was able to put that ball in. And I think it was just similarly for both goals. The defending was very pedestrian. It was very they were just looking, they were on watching instead of actually trying to do something. And it was quite frustrating because, like we were saying, probably for the whole season, the defense has been one of the most improved areas and one of the pillars of this United team this season. And I just felt like in those key moments, as often has happened this season, they just kind of crumbled a little bit. And it was those individual errors that cost us. And I really thought that during that first goal particularly, but even the second one, I think they could have been a little bit more dynamic in defending. I think Fred could have done better to help out Williams with blocking that second goal. Before the first one, I thought Wan-Bissaka and Lindelof had that covered. They had the double over there. It was a 2-on-2 situation, and they let Sevilla through. And whenever you put that ball across the box into that corridor of uncertainty, more often than not, it causes problems. And we know that De Gea is also not too keen of stepping off his line these days either. So it just ended up resulting in a goal. But yeah, I do agree, though, that Williams' positioning wasn't great either. And I think Maguire was kind of stuck in between trying to go in to help, or was he supposed to be focusing on the ball? And it was... I feel like this game, the biggest problem was the lack of communication at that back line, because I feel like both goals could have been prevented if they just talked more. But I just think that they didn't, and we got punished.
No, I agree with that then. But I'll follow up with this then. Do you think that was due to the chopping and changing with Bailly and Lindelof, or is that just just one of those things that happens?
I think it's a culmination of factors. I think, but I do agree though that even though I was expecting Lindelof to be brought back in, I thought Bailly was excellent against Copenhagen. I thought we could have probably been down 2 goals if not for him, because he had some crucial blocks.
Yeah.
And I just do feel that how dynamic and energetic he is, he's able to anticipate some things and just throw his body on the line, which helps more often than it doesn't. And I thought in a game like this, where we knew that Sevilla were going to be patient on the ball, they just kept switching it back and forth and trying to break into the United box. I thought somebody like Bailly, who is that kind of agile player who will throw in a tackle, who will put his body on the line, probably a little bit more than Lindelof, who more depends on his reading of the game. I thought he would have been a good option here and a good physical option as well. So I do think that that's part of it, but I also think fatigue plays into it as well. I thought Wan-Bissaka looked dead on his feet from tip-off, to be honest. He wasn't himself when it comes to the tackling, even though he put in some good ones. But there was also moments where he put in tackles where he probably shouldn't have, where he should have stayed on his feet and been more patient. And I think it's just a culmination of having a good semi-final performance defensively and then switching it up a little bit. And then I think the fatigue as well, even though they did have 6 days off. So I'm not sure if that is a valid excuse, because like Solskjaer said in the build-up, I don't think there has been a instance like this since the start of the season, maybe, or definitely since the turn of the year, where United had 6 days to rest and prepare for a game. So, yeah, I think it's a culmination of factors, but it's just when we needed that defense to be the most solid, they ended up bringing out their flaws a little bit.
Thank you. We'll change to the other side of the pitch, obviously, because in the last sort of 5-10 minutes of the first half, and certainly the first 10 minutes of the second half, United just ruined Sevilla with their possession, their dominance, their attacking play. Bruno and Pogba were, the main outlets for the attacks, and Martial, Rashford and Greenwood were, getting involved and actually, getting shots away. But obviously none of them found the back of the net. And Nitin, I'm going to ask you, just what do you think that was a reason for that? Because do you think it was because our players weren't clinical enough, bad luck, or and it just been one of those days, or is it something else? I mean, why do you think the ball didn't actually go into the net?
I think it's just one of those off days, because we've seen Greenwood and Martial scoring those before. So I think it's just one of those hard luck days. So obviously that would have been a game changer for us if Martial would have scored that, or Greenwood. It was a clear-cut opportunity for us, and we would have gone 3-1 up in the second half, and the game would have been over at that point in time. But I think it's probably a bad day at the office, I would say, because these two are great players. We have seen it in the past, how they can finish. So I think it's just a bad day at the office.
Thank you. Well, we'll just quickly touch on the final. The winner, what would be Luke De Jong's 7th goal of the season. It was no doubt about it. It was a brilliant cross and a brilliant finish, but absolutely should not have happened. Just from the defending point, the overlaps on the right-hand side for Sevilla's right-hand side were, they were just dominant. Is it just Brandon Williams' fault for getting the cross in? Is it just a combination of Lindelof and Wan-Bissaka's? Or, who do you personally blame for that goal, Nitin?
I'd say it was Brandon Williams' fault to start with, because he should have covered that space more tightly. And I think I'll blame the defensive four collective, because it would be harsh to pinpoint someone. Obviously, Maguire and Lindelof would have also done better in that case. I think it's rather a collective rather than individual. And to start off with, obviously, I think to nullify the initial threat, Brandon could have done better. But obviously, Maguire could have done better as well. So basically, it's a collective, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. Well, of course, it happened, and obviously it was a massive blow to United, who just didn't quite know what to do next. The team looked really shattered. It looked broken. It looked demoralised, and we saw that down the years in the bad stages of United's post Sir Alex, football. And but one of the things that I think people were very critical of Solskjaer for was not making changes early, because of course the changes made by United, I mean, 3 of them were made in the 87th minute. 1 of them was made in the 93rd minute with 3 minutes to go. And I think McTominay was getting warmed up and ready should United have equalised because they were on all-out attack. But Aaron, would you be critical of Solskjaer for not making those changes earlier? And if so, who would you have swapped out and when?
I'm on the fence with this one. I'm a yes and a no because one, I do agree that he should have made changes, and I do think that Rashford in the Copenhagen game and in the Sevilla game also looked quite dead on his feet for large periods of the game, and also his confidence just hasn't been the same. And I would have even thrown a Jesse Lingard on there for him, who has looked more decent and kind of more himself in recent games. And we also know what he does offer on the press, which Sevilla, by the way, were crumbling to quite a bit during that stretch where United had all those chances. So I do think that Solskjaer should have made some changes. But on the other hand, playing the devil's advocate, he just doesn't trust his subs bench. And we know that. We've seen that. And I think whether he admits to it or not, that is a message to the board that, look, it's the 85th minute here of a European semi-final. We need a goal, and I'm kind of struggling here of who to bring on. There is just no game changers on the bench. We had players like he brought on Igalo, who was trying to kind of barge his way into the box with a crowded space in there. There was just not happening. We had Daniel James. He was getting balls in open spaces on the wing, and he was starting to cut inside instead of trying to beat his man to the byline. So it's kind of like, do you really blame him that much? Because if you are the manager, do you make those changes where you don't think those players can change the game more than the players who are just jaded on the pitch? It's a tough situation to be in, and I think it just shows, as painful as this defeat was, it might be a blessing in disguise because a trophy at the end of a season where we finished 3rd might have papered over the cracks. Whereas now we see clearly that investment is needed, that this team, I think Solskjaer has reached a max with this team at the moment, and further improvements are needed for this team to go to the next level. Because if you reach 3 semi-finals and you lose all 3 of them, that's a sign that this team is just, it's good. It's better with Bruno. Solskjaer says they're a joy to work with, but I don't think there's too much more that you can take out of them. And actually, if we look to the start of the season, would any of us have expected us to finish 3rd and reach 3 semi-finals? I don't think so either. So I think, as much as he can be criticized for getting his team selections wrong and sometimes even in-game decisions, I do agree with that. You have to also look on the other side and see the personnel that he has available and what he got out of it for large chunks of the season, which I think has to be credited to him as well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with everything you've just said there. I think I was actually gonna ask you that exact question. Did you think that he didn't bring them on just to sort of almost demonstrate the the lack of squad depth? But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think really it demonstrates just how little we do have on that bench. I mean, obviously there were 12 players on the bench for this game, but there'll only be, if I'm not mistaken, 7 when the Premier League resumes, because they've rejected the idea of they rejected the idea of nine bench players and 5 substitutes for the start of next season. That's going to be back to the 7 and 3 that is obviously standard tradition for the Premier League. And it's just going to show that those 3 players that come on, if they're needed to, they're going to have to make a difference. And I think Daniel James could do with a bit of pre-season to improve on his decision-making, as we saw happen to Rashford over the last summer. Not that I'm saying they're on the same level, but it's the same kind of situation. Igalo, obviously, we know his limitations, but we also know what he can do. And so he also knows that too. But you're right, it's all about signings. And I think the way is that he's been... When you compare Solskjaer to Mourinho, the way they go about asking for players, Solskjaer does it sort of over a long period of time from what I've seen so far, because he obviously doesn't have the managerial history to say, I want these players now, and if I don't, this team's not going anywhere. He'll just gradually build it up, and he's done it subtly against Sevilla, and he did it subtly in the last few games, really, where the substitutions haven't really happened. I mean, against Leicester, the substitutions were made after the goal, or certainly after the first goal, maybe after the second one too. It just demonstrates how little there is there. And he's doing it really subtly so that the board kind of almost see it on their own, by themselves, and make the decisions. Yet, still no transfers have been made yet. And you can see on Twitter that fans are going a little bit anxious and a little bit stir crazy about that, but we'll get onto that in a bit. Overall, you said it was a success this season, I think, or definitely progress. But Nitin, would you say that the season was a success?
I would say it was a good season. I wouldn't say a very good or excellent, but it was a good season because from where we were in December and where we are reached, it is an unbelievable achievement, especially with the kind of impact Bruno has brought into the team. And nobody expected us to finish third behind Liverpool and City. If this was the case, if someone told me that we would finish third in December when we lost to Burnley at home 2-0, I would have definitely taken it with both hands. So, I would give it a solid 7 out of 10 season. So obviously it is the first full season in charge for Solskjaer, and obviously there were many gaps to fill. We have already sold a few players in Sanchez, Lukaku, and he didn't have proper backups either. So it's a fantastic job by Solskjaer. We finished just above those two elites in Liverpool and City. And obviously, we have had 3 semi-finals. We couldn't win, but that's just a matter of luck also. So I would say it was a good season, and I'm giving it a 7 out of 10 season.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, obviously, there were lots of fans at the start of the season that didn't back the team, back the manager, back certainly the strikers, not replacing Lukaku, not replacing Herrera or Fellaini or even Valencia properly, and letting Smalling and Sanchez go were mistakes. We'll talk firstly just from the very beginning. Aaron, the transfers that were made into the club, would you say, I mean, we'll start with the first 3 and then go on to the second 2, obviously. Were they all? Have they all been successes, or are they all sort of a not yet? So, I mean, where do you see them?
Well, I mean, I think when you look at the grand scheme, the whole season, and how much United's defense has improved with Wan-Bissaka and Maguire in there, that they had the most clean sheets in Europe's top 5 leagues in all competitions. I think that shows that they were good. They were. It was Solskjaer or whoever was the Solskjaer and his staff. They identified that the defense just hasn't been good enough, and they addressed it straight away. They got the players in, and we saw immediate improvements. Obviously, there was some growing pains at the beginning because it's normal. 2 new players come into a back 4, so you have 50% new, 50% old. You have to get that communication, and you have to learn each other's habits, how to work together. So I think that was understandable. And it was even seen with Maguire. He needed some time to grow into his role from going from Leicester to Manchester United. Even though we haven't won the league or whatever in so long, this is still, the biggest club in England. And the expectations, even though they have lowered a little bit by consensus, they are still there. What the club thrives for, or should be thriving for, is winning the trophies. So I think we've seen that from Maguire, that he needed some time to adapt. And once he did, and he started putting in good performances, he became the club captain because he was probably the biggest leader we had at that time. Mm-hmm. So I do think that those 2 were great signings, and that they, over the course of the season, they have been successes. And I think near the end, Wan-Bissaka started deteriorating a little bit, but I do think that was because of fatigue, because he was playing just week in, week out, pretty much every game. He only got a couple of breaks, maybe down the far side of the season when Fosu-Mensah came back a little bit. But other than that, he was just non-stop, and he had the most tackles in the league and all that stuff. So I do think that these 2 are successes and proof that Solskjaer and his scouting team can be trusted. When it comes to Daniel James, I do think that I think we've seen, and I think Solskjaer even came out and said that the plan for him was to come in and play about 20-25 games this season. And straight away, as a youngster coming in from the Championship, he became a starter and pretty much undroppable because there was nobody to drop him for at the start of the season. So he was, at the start of the season, I think teams didn't know how to play against him because he was relatively unknown. He came in, his pace was great. He's technically a very sound player. He can finish too, but it's just, I think over time, he started getting exposed a little bit because he just completely bypassed the adaptation period at Manchester United. So I think the more pressure that got on him as the more he started, his decision-making started coming out as just not being quite up to par yet. But I do think that for the price that United signed him for and the age that he's at, he will come good in the future. And this is not necessarily saying that he will be the next Cristiano Ronaldo, but he can be a player that we have seen in games, say against teams like City, who play a high line. He was exposing. He made their left back from that game against Etihad move to Germany. That's how much of a terror he was to him. Angelino, that is, who plays for Leipzig now. So I do think that he can be a very useful player, and especially in those kind of games. But like you said, his decision-making and stuff like that, it just needs work. But he is only 22, I think, right now. He's about to turn 22, or he just turned 22. So I definitely don't think that was a signing for here and now, but it was just forced by the circumstances.
Thank you. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's all bang on. I think Maguire and Wan-Bissaka obviously have helped defensively. I think the attacking side for both players needs to improve substantially. I think really, I mean, Maguire set pieces. He had the most shots from any defender in the Premier League, and he scored 1 goal. So that says a lot about how he needs to improve on that part. And Wan-Bissaka, obviously, I think he had over 100 crosses this season, and I mean, while some of them have been down to missed chances, a lot of them have been down to the poor quality, and that's just something they can work on. So I have every confidence that they can sort that out, and I feel the same for Dan James. I think he's got enough in him to show that he can develop into a really great player. And I remember we talked about this at the start of the season. He's a really it's a low what's the term? High reward but low risk, high reward player. And that's really what he is. So, yeah, I've got every confidence they can sort themselves out. Nathan, what about, I mean, obviously we can talk about Bruno Fernandes for days and days and how he's revolutionised the club. But, I mean, Odion Ighalo, do you think that was a smart move, or do you think that was just a rushed decision?
I think it was more of a panic buy, but it came to fruition in a few of the games. We've seen him score. I think he works good as a target man, and I think he deserved more chances because, I mean, not as a starter, obviously, but, in these kinds of games, we could have brought on Ighalo much earlier. So I think Ighalo was a panic buy on the deadline day, but it was not a bad buy either. So he has scored a few goals for us. So I think, he's a man that breathes and loves the club just as we do. So obviously, to have someone of that mentality come to a club is always good for us. So I wouldn't say he was that was a bad signing anyways. That was a good signing, to be honest. And it's good that we have extended his loan spell till January. So nice to see him in the upcoming season as well.
Absolutely. I mean, you've obviously said that the season obviously was a 7 out of 10. I think that's fair. I think it was. It's not success, but it's definitely progress. I think that was something that Paul Scholes said at the end of the season, and that's very true. I think the fact is that we've competed on all fronts to a degree, to the degree that we were able to when it comes to the Premier League. But the other ones, we had the chances to go to the finals. I think if things had gone our way in all 3 semi-finals, we could have, competed certainly could have beaten Aston Villa in the FA Cup. In the Carabao Cup. I definitely think we could have beaten Arsenal in the FA Cup. Inter Milan is definitely the most difficult of the 3, so I won't sort of hedge my bets either way. But I reckon United could have got over the line. There were obviously different circumstances for each game. I won't go into them, but it does demonstrate how much United have improved, just being able to do what United should be expected to do and compete on all fronts. Aaron, do you expect United can do the same thing, if not better, next season? Or do you think that this was a one-off when it comes to like the luck maybe of the runs or not?
I think whether they can do it again next season or not depends on the business that's going to be done, because I think like we talked about, and I think we all agreed on that, for a large part of the season, and especially until Bruno was signed and Pogba came back, United were relying on players that are surplus to requirements at this club in all of those competitions. Yeah. And especially in the Carabao Cup run, we were struggling. Wasn't it Rochdale who took us to penalties?
They did, yes.
So it wasn't easy by no means, and it just showed, I think, that, as I said, out of this team, out of this current squad, pre-Bruno and pre the return of Pogba, Solskjaer got out the maximum, I think, from those players, and especially with a Jesse Lingard who has deteriorated in form quite a lot, and an Andreas Pereira who has never really been a regular contributor when it comes to the statistics. He was just, I don't know, I don't want to say that he was there to fill up the numbers, but it's just, it often felt that way because he just wasn't really contributing that much. So I do think that whether United do it again next season and whether they do better, because like Nitin said, this season was a good season, but it wasn't a successful season because ultimately we won nothing. Third place and 3 semi-finals. It's like for the Sir Alex Ferguson era clubs, that was like the standard. That's failure essentially. So, but at the stage where we are right now with this rebuild from probably one of the worst decades in the club's history, chopping and changing managers, Solskjaer came in and he showed that he has the managerial nous to steady the ship and that these players want to play for him. And once the quality in the team improved, we actually started seeing patterns of play and his style of play. So I think now it's just down to the board to see that, to acknowledge that progress has been made, and it's been a dramatic progress since Mourinho left. And not only in the mood around the club, but in how they were playing, and there were some of the results in the big games, and how they were able to put away the smaller teams post-lockdown. There has been improvements, but now it's just about just believing, buying into what Solskjaer is trying to put down in front of them on the pitch and strengthening it, because I don't think we can do too much better next season with this squad that we have right now with no reinforcements.
No, I totally agree with that. And we'll go straight on to that right now, actually. We'll start with the transfers. So obviously there has been one small signing from Manchester United so far. Of course, United had obviously already played Partizan earlier this season in the Europa League, and they've signed youngster Filip Stevanovic, 17-year-old Serbian international, for just over 12 million euros, and he's going to be loaned back to Partizan for the upcoming season. Not exactly the transfer news that most United fans were looking forward to. Obviously, the self-imposed deadline of the 10th of August has already been and long gone for the transfer of Jadon Sancho, who's obviously already played in 2 or 3 Dortmund friendlies since that point and scored and done very well. So it's what it seems very clear is that United either have to pay the £108 million that Dortmund want, which they said they wouldn't be bullied into paying, or they don't get him. So it just seems a lot of unnecessary kind of talk that it's essentially either United pay or they don't. Personal terms have already been agreed. We've heard that for weeks now. We've also heard that Sancho was signing for weeks now, but that's obviously not happened. But Nathan, do you think it is going to... I mean, either way, if United don't pay the money, the fans will be up in arms because we didn't sign Sancho. Obviously, there have been alternatives named, but I think they're all just a ploy to try and get Dortmund to hurry it up. And do you think if they do pay the money, they'll look stupid for saying we're not going to be bullied into this huge transfer valuation, and then they pay it? Well, where do you see this saga ending?
I think it's more of United's tactics to accept a lower fee, but I don't think that would work here with Dortmund, because they have been firm on their valuation, and obviously Jadon Sancho has got a contract till 2023, so they are under no pressures to sell. So what differs Jadon Sancho is that he's not pushing for a more like Havertz is doing to go to Chelsea at the moment. So Jadon Sancho, I think he's of the mentality that I'm happy at Dortmund, I'll be also happy at Man United. So I think he's of that kind of mentality, but I'm not so sure what is happening behind the scenes. So after reading through the lines, I think this is the current scenario right now with Jadon Sancho. So I don't see us paying 108 million in the post-coronavirus market, because obviously I think the constant briefs that have been coming up from the English journalists that the personal terms haven't been agreed. I think it's just a ploy by United to save their face when they ultimately pull out of this deal, because the personal terms news have only been reported by Fabrizio Romano, and all the English journalists have been reporting contrary things. So I think these are just briefings given by United to the English press, so that ultimately, if they fail in their pursuit of Jadon Sancho, they can say that yeah, we were ready to pay Dortmund, but ultimately the player asked for a much higher salary, and the agents asked for a higher salary, so we backed out. This was the case with Dybala last summer. So this could be a ploy by United to save their face. While in reality, it is obviously, we all know that they are not ready to pay the 108 million Dortmund are asking. So I'm not I'm not so sure where this transfer is going to end. But these constant briefs by United citing the wages and the agent fees, I think it's quite concerning from a United point of view, because I think it's United are just preparing to walk away from this deal by giving such notions to the media, and while in reality, the reality lies somewhere else. So I think, they might be slowly walking away from it.
Thank you. Well, I mean, in the circumstances that they do, obviously United have, or it's claimed that United have named a few other players that could be an alternate signing. Ousmane Dembele from Barcelona has now been ruled out, but was one earlier this month. Kingsley Coman still remains an option that United can loan in or buy for around £40 million. Perisic is a loan or a purchase for, I think, £27 million, but he looks more set to join Tottenham. And then there was also Douglas Costa, who more recently has been offered to United and would probably cost around 30 million or maybe even a loan. And I'm going to throw in a few other names. Memphis Depay, who we obviously have a buyback clause for and still very clearly is a supporter of United and is actually playing tonight against Bayern Munich. Will give any alerts that I can just now give that Gnabry has just scored for Bayern Munich. And also Wilf Zaha, who looks set to leave Crystal Palace as well. And obviously a few other names like David Brooks has been linked, but I think that's more for the sub number 10 role. Arian, would you take any of these other players, or would you just say it's Sancho or bust?
I mean, I do think that for what United are trying to do for this project and the profile of player, Sancho just fits like a glove. And what he has shown since he came to Dortmund, just how much he has developed. I think in today's market, for the output that guy has when it comes to goal contributions, it's like he's like a Bruno from the Bundesliga. He just scores or assists in every single game, or at least that's what it feels like. So I think if you bring in a 20-year-old like that with those kind of leadership qualities too, because he's probably one of the older statesmen in that Dortmund team now for the last season or so, especially in terms of first team experience, I just think it pays off. You just have to pay the money. And I think just how advanced United got into it, I think you just have to do it. But I do see, again, to play the devil's advocate for Ed Woodward, which is difficult. It's very difficult, but demanding 120 million up front and not really trying to play ball with installments, it's tough in this climate. It has to be tough. But I think United have the power that other teams don't, and they could cough it up if the worst comes to worst and Dortmund just say, no, we just want 120 million and that's it. And I think they should, because we have players that are good but just not good enough. We need somebody who's at that level, who's better than Greenwood at the moment, that can slot in there. Or even if Greenwood starts that game against Sevilla, you're like, oh, there is a Jadon Sancho that can come on, and he creates chances when United need them in that last 10 minutes. And it's just that kind of quality of player now. I don't think it's about squad players, because United have plenty of those. It's about bringing in players who immediately improve this team and who fight for a starting spot. And I think Sancho should and will be their priority. And I don't think United have quite given up on him yet. But also touching on that David Brooks thing, I'm not mad at the idea of that, for him to come in and maybe play backup to Bruno at all, because I do think that he is significantly better at the moment than Andreas Pereira and Jesse Lingard. He just had some injury problems, but before that, he was kind of becoming a little bit of a sensation over in that Bournemouth side last season. So I think if somebody like him comes in and he's only 23 years old, I think that's a decent move by United. And especially in those smaller games, he is creative enough to come in there and give Bruno a rest and play valuable minutes. And he's also an option off the bench that you probably can rely on more than what we have at the moment. So as much as I just said that we don't need squad players, even the squad players that should come in, say, because we are lacking in that number 10 department, and Bruno will need rest because the schedule is going to be hectic again from 12th September onwards. I do think if we do get squad players, they just have to be significantly better or with more upside than what we have at the moment. So I do hope that United sit down and look at this seriously, because I feel like 3 players are needed minimum in this transfer window in order to actually improve this team and to bring in some quality that improves us straight away.
Well, I think that's a very good point. I think the point is that the definition of squad player now means a lot differently to maybe 1, 2, or 3 years ago. I mean, you think about at the start of the season, Jose Mourinho was up in the Sky Sports pundit box, and he said the 4 teams that could win the league this season are City, Liverpool, Tottenham Hotspur, and City's second team, because City's bench was littered with 50-60 million pound players, but that was their squad. Sane obviously didn't want to play second fiddle to Mahrez or Bernardo Silva, so he left. But the others, they know that if they sit on the bench one week, they could easily play the next week if they train hard and play well when they come on. And they're almost at the point of world-class players. You think of Rodri, Mahrez, Bernardo Silva, Phil Foden. Let's ignore the defenders because they're all useless other than Laporte. But the attackers, Aguero or Jesus, whoever starts. I mean, that you even see De Bruyne get benched just for squad rotation, and who comes in? Bernardo Silva and Phil Foden. They put an 8 out of 10 in. That's what a squad player should mean for a title-winning squad, because the title winners are getting 90-plus points in the last 3 seasons. So that's what United need to get. They need to get a squad bench that actually basically is an important first-team player that adds competition and that wants to play week in, week out, but can't because they're being benched by a better player or someone that's playing better. So I think that's where the difference changes, because obviously I think maybe 3 or 4 years ago, Mata, Lingard, Pereira, Fred, McTominay, Igalo, that'd be a decent squad bench. That'd be, they're great squad players. They add numbers that could offer a little bit of quality when you want a bit of rest. But the way the schedules are being run at the moment and the way that the numbers of games teams are playing, that they need to be better players that actually make a direct difference, and the improvement on every single club, because every single club you can either say that the Premier League's become more competitive or less competitive, but it's all due to squad depth, because Liverpool and Man City have the best squad depths, and the other teams, that's why there's that bigger gap.
If I could just add to that real quick.
Of course.
Like you said, even when we look at City's 3 frontmen in that Lyon game, they start De Bruyne, Gabriel Jesus, and Sterling, and on the bench they have Mahrez, Silva, Bernardo Silva, and a Phil Foden. So say for United, so that's 4 players who 3 are proven and 1 that's a wonder kid. So say you compare the situation exactly to United if they sign Sancho. United say starts Sancho, Martial, and Rashford, and on the bench all we have is Greenwood. So that kind of shows you as a direct comparison just how far off in terms of that quality and depth, like you were saying, United are. And we are only asking for Sancho this summer. We're not really saying we need 3 high-quality forwards. We were saying if Sancho comes in, that improves us dramatically, and that makes us just that bit better to be able to compete more. Whereas City have just, it's wealth over there. And then I think if you compare that directly to Liverpool, they had to prioritize some competitions, because even though they're deep, they're not that deep. They're not as deep as City to be able to win the Carabao Cup, get to the Champions League quarterfinal, and challenge for the league at the same time. So I do think that Liverpool, they had to prioritize the league, and they just kind of gave the Champions League up, and they gave the Carabao Cup up by going to the Club World Cup and not opting to play against Aston Villa. So I do think that the kind of depth that City has is just unrealistic for most to attain. But it just shows how far United are off being able to be solid on all fronts and to be that league challenger, because you just need superior players in those positions.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it's not just that right wing position. It's the number 10 position. It's the centre back position. More specifically, the left-sided centre back position. But we all know the links with the centre backs, but the cam ones are still up in the air, because we don't know where Grealish is going. We don't know what's happening with Van der Beek, who looks like he's going to be targeted by the newly appointed Ronald Koeman at Barcelona. There aren't really many other centre attacking midfield options that United have been linked with, other than, of course, the now more recently David Brooks. I'm going to throw in a couple more names here. There's obviously I would really like United to go for Leipzig's Dani Olmo or Christian Nkunku, who have both been brilliant for Leipzig. I wouldn't be opposed to looking at James Rodriguez if that would be an option, or even Thomas Lemar, who look wasted really, either just not playing or not playing in attacking teams really. We all saw the Lemar at Monaco, who won the league and got to a Champions League semi-final, and then he moved to Atletico and didn't play. Nathan, who would you like to sign? Would you like to sign Grealish as your top priority? And if not him, who's the realistic option?
I think it would be Van de Beek, because I think he would cost only as 40 million, and that's great value for money. So he's a player that has proven himself in the highest stage in the Champions League and providing goals and scoring goals and providing assists. So he's just 23, so still there's plenty of years left in him. Obviously, Grealish is a great player, and I think Van de Beek adds much more value to the team. And Grealish is obviously it would be a good addition if we can purchase him. First of all, dealing with Aston Villa wouldn't be that easy, and obviously they are in the Premier League right now. And I think Grealish has been playing in the left wing lately, so I think Donny Van de Beek could be that man to come in and play that the central attack midfield role more precisely than Grealish. So I think Donny Van de Beek at 40 million is just a bargain, and that could be the bargain of the summer if Barcelona snatch him up. So my preference would be Donny Van de Beek, because he's a player that has proven himself at the highest level, and obviously with Grealish we have that English tax added to him, and obviously I'm not saying he's overrated, but obviously there will be a more hype around these English players. So it's Van de Beek, obviously my first choice. Hope we go after him, but apparently I think it's all eggs in one basket for Sancho. So if we let Donny Van de Beek at 40 million go to Barcelona, that would be a great mistake from our end.
Thank you. I do agree with that. I think it sort of seems like Van de Beek should be our choice. I think he might be coaxed to Barcelona based on the fact that obviously Koeman was the former Dutch manager who gave him his debut for the Netherlands. And obviously he's got his former teammate and friend Frankie de Jong there already, who could just say, come over, you'll have a good time, maybe if we can keep Messi, but that's always up in the air as well. But yeah, I would like to see Van de Beek at United. Obviously Grealish I'm a big fan of as well, and I think those two will be the top two priorities for the number 10. We'll just see who gets there first, if we even do. Obviously, historically, United haven't actually done that well when signing players after getting Champions League football. I think the exception was the 2017 transfer window, in which we signed Matic, Lindelof, Lukaku, and then Sanchez in January, although I'd rather forget about the last one. Do you think we might be facing something similar, or do you think that lessons have been learned from, certainly the 2018 summer window?
I think it is obvious, like when we have Champions League football, we have a tendency to spend less, because obviously for the Glazers, it's all about money. And for them, finishing first or fourth doesn't matter as long as we are in the Champions League, which means that there's no dip in revenues for them. So it is an interesting summer ahead, because obviously they would have the pandemic. They could use the pandemic as an excuse for not spending. So I'm not predicting it, but it could be a possible scenario where they could just say that, look, it was a global pandemic, so we didn't have the money to spend and just back off. We saw what happened with Jose Mourinho's last summer in charge. So he finished second with an bang average side. So still he wasn't back. We only bought Fred and Diogo Dalot from Porto. So it was a poor summer. And with David Moyes, he was an ambitious man. So he wanted Kroos, all those high-profile guns, but we couldn't buy any of them, and we ended up paying more than the release clause for Fellaini on the deadline day. So that just shows, like, when we are in the Champions League, the board are pretty much relaxed. about the spendings. I could be wrong here, but this is just my assumption, because when we are in the Champions League, there's add revenues to the club, and obviously, the club might sit and rest on their laurels. So I really hope that's not the case with Solskjaer here, because this is going to be a really crucial window for Solskjaer and obviously Man United, because if they decide not to back Solskjaer this summer, it's obviously going to be one step forward and 3 steps backward. All the good work that Solskjaer has been doing for the last 1 year will come to nothing, because obviously we can't challenge for a title with this current crop of players. We need more reinforcement. So for all the hard work that Solskjaer and this team has done, so they deserve the backing. I hope they do back him this summer, because this is eventually, in my opinion, is one of the most critical summer since Sir Alex. So we need to back Solskjaer for all the good work that he has been doing with the pretty ordinary Man United team.
Thank you. I totally agree with that. 100%. Let's hope that things go smoothly. Hopefully in the next few days, we're expecting news about Pogba's contract, after reports suggesting he is happy at the club and wanting to stay and might sign a new deal. We're hoping that the Sancho saga ends soon and positively for United, and also for the other signings. One signing that does seem another step closer, or rather re-signing, is Dean Henderson looks set to sign a new deal for Manchester United. Obviously, his current deal expires at the end of next season. And he's looking set to earn over 100k a week at United, after saying his goodbyes to the Sheffield United players and fans. And as they signed Aaron Ramsdale from Bournemouth, who is undergoing his medical today. Do you think, Arian, that he should... I mean, I've made my opinion clear that I think he should be loaned out for another year, get some experience at a different club. I was thinking Dortmund maybe as a loan to make way for Sancho, because Berkey's had some problems. Maybe get him there, have some experience playing European and domestic football before maybe allowing Romero and or Grant to leave at the end of their contracts next season. Or do you think he should just come straight in and compete with De Gea for the coming season?
I think he should come straight in and compete for that number 1 spot, because I think, as has been the case, I feel quietly with a few more players than just David De Gea, complacency started to creep in a little bit for him in recent years, because, with Sergio Romero, as good as he always has been, he's been reliable, and we've always said that if anything ever happens to De Gea, or if he was to leave, you wouldn't be mad at having Sergio Romero there to fill in. But you never really look at Sergio Romero as a potential number 1 candidate. And I think that's the problem here, because I feel like De Gea knows that too. And whenever Solskjaer speaks about it, he always labels Romero as the best number 2 in the world. It's never really feels like the direct competition, as much as they claim that they challenge each other in training. I feel like at the end of the day, as good as Romero can be in training, De Gea knows that I'm on the team sheet. So I feel like with somebody like Dean Henderson, who in one season in the Premier League showed how good he is and immediately became one of the top 5 keepers in the league in terms of clean sheets alone, let alone just how solid that Sheffield defence was, largely due to him and some of his heroic saves at various parts of the season. I think if a keeper of that caliber comes in, and even if De Gea starts on September 12th or whenever United's first game of the season will be, in the back of his mind, I think he knows that he has a direct competitor there now, and a player who fits the profile that United want. He's homegrown, he's English, he's young, and he's already nearing world-class status. We just need to see a little bit more of him. So I think if I was in charge, I would keep him around, because in an ideal scenario, you don't just throw him right in there into the Shark Tank and say, there you go, Dean, here's the number 1 shirt, now go. You're letting him maybe come in on those cup games, but if De Gea starts messing up again, if he lets in blunders, if he has a drop in form, if he gets complacent, no problem. We have a number 1 caliber goalkeeper right here, and he comes in and he can keep that shirt. He might not let De Gea back in if he gets that number 1 shot, if he gets a league appearance. So I do think that United have that comfort, and he, from what he's been saying, he is dying to play for the club. So I do think if they lay out a path and say, you stay here for 1 season and compete with De Gea, and if he's messing up again, you will play all the cup games. And if he's messing up again in the league, or if he costs us points, you're going to come in. and you're going to have your chance to stake your claim for having the number 1 shirt next season. But he is still at that age where he can afford to, I don't want to say drop a season because he will still get his games, but where he is technically the number 2 to start it off. But it is that competition for places that United are lacking in all positions, and I think in goal it is the same. So I would hold on to him instead of loaning him out. And unfortunately, you would just bid farewell to Sergio Romero, who I think is at the point in his career, and he's proved at United where he deserves to play regular football instead of just warming the bench and then getting dropped for a semi-final after not doing anything that warranted it.
Thank you. That's a very interesting take, actually, because I mean, obviously it's been sort of said that Solskjaer needs to be more ruthless when it comes to his decision making, and maybe that would help David De Gea. I can definitely see that happening because I do think that obviously he has been lacking a bit of confidence, maybe maybe he has been complacent. I can agree with that. So it's interesting to see what will happen there, because it does look like he isn't going back to Sheffield United next season, and we'll see how that works, because obviously it looks like that teams are going to be wanting to sign Sergio Romero as well as Dean Henderson. So we'll have to see how that turns out. Just before we finish, obviously we've just had our poll vote, and actually I'll just for a second before I say that, Serge Gnabry has just scored a second. Bayern are 2-0 up against Lyon in the Champions League semi-final, so they look set to be playing against PSG to save football from the Parisians. But we have just got the results of our poll. Obviously, we've had 4 topics up for talking about, and the one that was the dominant winner was one about Bruno Fernandes for the Manchester United captain role. So, of course, this is on the back of the fact that Bruno was giving Lindelof a talking to after, well, I say a talking to, a heated discussion between the two after the winner, what would be turning out to be the winner from Luke de Jong against Sevilla. And Maguire was just looking to the referees or something. And a lot of fans were calling for Bruno to be Manchester United's captain and Maguire to be stripped of it. Nathan, what's your take on that? Do you think that's really rather reactionary, or do you think there is a little bit more weight to that than certainly I'm giving at the moment?
I think it has more weight into it because Bruno is a great leader. We have seen it with Sporting. You know, he's a great leader. He's a born winner, and he's a great leader to lead a team. So we saw it in Sporting Lisbon colours when that team looked up to him to make things happen, not only because of his quality but also his leadership skills were elite. So Maguire, I think, the reason Solskjaer handed him the captain's armband was because the trust that Solskjaer had in Maguire. Maguire having sustained that hip injury, still, committed to playing for United. That's a great thing, of course, since this is his first season, and obviously even after sustaining that hip injury, he played whole season. So that is terrific news as well. So in a leadership point of view, obviously I'll prefer Bruno Fernandes, because I don't think Harry Maguire is vocal enough. I might be wrong. It's just my assumption again, because I don't think Harry Maguire is vocal enough. I think Bruno Fernandes, could be a better fit, as a Man United captain in the long term. But it would be harsh on Maguire as well, because he has been the captain of United only for 6 months. So it would be really harsh on Maguire to strip him off right now. So I think it's just a bit of reactionary to strip him here at this moment in time. But going forward, I would definitely like to see Bruno handed the captain's armband, because he is a leader. He's a vocal figure in the team, and he actually cares what it is to play for United. So I think in the long run, I would definitely like to see Bruno Fernandes being given the captaincy over Maguire.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I mean, something that I've noticed about that kind of the captaincy, really, I mean, obviously in the last couple of years, Pogba's obviously had the captain's armband, De Gea's had the captain's armband, and obviously Young has had the captain's armband, but it's not relevant. I'm really hoping to ignore that part of our history. But no, I mean, obviously we've seen Pogba have the armband, and we've seen him obviously almost sort of realise, right, I'm the captain, I've got to be the inspirational person, I've got to perform, and I've got to perform. And it more often than not led to him sort of almost trying to do too much. And then when the armband was taken off him against Wolves, I mean, obviously he had the horrible time with Mourinho, but then after that, his games actually started to play better. He hasn't got the captain's armband this season, and he's just played his game, and I think he's been a lot better. When he's being that central midfielder that doesn't have to do everything, and he's sort of almost relinquished that role. I think Roy Keane said it as well, that he's enjoying his game more because he's not having to feel the responsibility of being the captain. We know Bruno's got that ability because obviously captain for Sporting, he's got those leadership mentality. I've also seen with David De Gea that when he's had the captain's armband, he's shouldered the responsibility well. It's actually obviously made him say, "I've got to perform. I'm the captain." And he's actually put in really good shifts when he's been given the armband. Do you think we're seeing something like that with Maguire, Arian? Maybe taking the armband away from him will just make him focus on his game instead of also having to be the leader? Or do you think it would be the other way around?
Yeah, I don't know how viable doing that is a year after giving it to him. I don't know if that does any good for the dressing room. If you're just like, yeah, okay, Harry, this experiment was a failure. We're going to take this away from you now. You're actually not the leader we thought you were. Like, how does that conversation even go after one season? It's a difficult one, and especially when you see how reluctant Solskjaer is to ever drop him, even for games against like League One opposition. He always plays because I think he just feels like he can't rely on anybody else to lead that back line. And I think in terms of that, and just being a representative of this football club, and I do feel like he is vocal on the pitch. I think we've seen ever since the crowd stopped attending games that he's been quite critical of his fullbacks and telling him what positions to get into and stuff. So I do think that in terms of being a leader, I think he is probably one of the biggest leaders at the club. And certainly the fact that he's English, I think, helps what United are trying to achieve at the moment. But yeah, I just don't know. I do see the argument for Bruno, and I'd love it. I love a player like him who's so, I don't know if you want to say eccentric or just, he comes in and straight away he takes this club by the scruff of the neck and improves everything about it on and off the pitch. But I just don't think that it is good timing right now. And at this stage of the rebuild where I feel like there has been some sort of a harmony around United's dressing room to go in and skip or strip the first team captain off the armband for arguably no real reason, because I don't think leadership has been that much of an issue, especially from Maguire's standpoint. I do think that we lack leaders all over the pitch, and especially in those moments like in the semi-finals. But I do think that Maguire has done his job to a level where he doesn't really deserve to be stripped at this moment. But like Nathan said, though, maybe in the long-term picture, and if Bruno just keeps going like he is, he does become somebody who comes into the picture and there's like, in order to take the next level, this guy needs to be the one that's representing us, as the captain. But I think right now, I don't think that would be the wisest move with everything that's going on.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely see that point very, very much. So, obviously, only time will tell to see if that if either circumstances occur. We'll have to see. Well, then, I'm afraid that is all we have time for this week. This is the final episode of season 1. It's been over a year long due to COVID, but it's been a pleasure to do it. We'll be back probably in a couple of weeks' time for the start of next week, but we need to have a little bit of a break as well. Thank you for listening, and thank you to both Aaron and Nathan for joining me today. It's been a pleasure, guys, to have you on the final episode for the season.
Thanks. Yes.
I remember when we started this off, it was you, myself, and Suraj do it on the first one, if I'm not mistaken, Aaron.
Yeah, it was the transfers, the craziness of that first Solskjaer transfer window.
Yeah,
we've definitely come a long way since.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and definitely all for the better, which is amazing, really. And hopefully we'll be saying something similar, if not definitely more improvement this time next year as well, but we'll have to see. If you have any questions or topics you would like for us to discuss for the start of season 2, then comment below on this YouTube video or on the Twitter or Facebook post. And of course, we will be having the poll in a couple of weeks' time before season 2 begins. So have a vote on that, and we'll give you a shout out if you have any other questions. And if you enjoyed this, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and follow us on Twitter for all of our content.